The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Kensington Palace as Kate Middleton stepped out onto the terrace with her morning tea. The summer of 2019 had been particularly warm, and even at 8 in the morning, she could feel the promise of another scorching day ahead. She watched as the gardeners moved methodically across the lawn, their early start a testament to their dedication to keeping the royal grounds in pristine condition. Kate had always found solace in these quiet morning moments before the day's official duties began. Today promised to be especially busy, with a charity event in the afternoon and several meetings scheduled throughout the morning. But for now, she could simply enjoy the peace and the gentle warmth of the sun on her face. Her reverie was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the gravel path. She turned to see Prince Harry approaching, his characteristic grin already in place despite the early hour. He was dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt, his red hair slightly disheveled as if he had just rolled out of bed. "Morning, Kate," Harry called out as he climbed the steps to the terrace. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It certainly is," Kate replied, setting down her teacup. "You're up early. I thought you had a late night at that veterans' dinner." Harry shrugged, settling into one of the wrought iron chairs beside her. "Couldn't sleep. Too much energy, I suppose. Besides, I wanted to catch you before your day gets crazy." There was something in his tone that made Kate look at him more carefully. She had known Harry long enough to recognize when he was plotting something. The mischievous gleam in his eyes was unmistakable, the same look he had worn as a child when he was about to pull one of his famous pranks. "What are you up to, Harry?" she asked, though her tone was more amused than suspicious. "Me? Nothing at all," Harry replied innocently, but the grin widened. "I was just thinking about how serious everything has become lately. I suppose we've been rather formal lately." "Exactly." Harry leaned forward, his enthusiasm evident. "And you know who's been the most formal of all of us?" Kate didn't need to ask. They both knew he was talking about William. As the future king, William had been taking his responsibilities increasingly seriously, and while Kate admired his dedication, she had to admit that he had become rather serious. "He works very hard," Kate said diplomatically, though she couldn't help but smile at where this conversation seemed to be heading. "He does," Harry agreed. "But when was the last time you saw him truly relax? Really let his guard down?" Kate thought about it. William had been under tremendous pressure lately, with increasing royal duties and the constant scrutiny of the media. Even their private family time had become somewhat formal, with William always conscious of setting a good example for their children. "It has been a while," she admitted. Harry's grin became positively wicked. "Well, I think it's time we reminded him how to have some fun." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Kate asked, though she was beginning to suspect she knew where this was going. "Nothing too elaborate," Harry said, his tone deliberately casual. "Just a little surprise to help him remember that life doesn't always have to be so serious." Kate raised an eyebrow. "A surprise. A water balloon fight." The words hung in the air between them for a moment. Kate stared at Harry, certain she had misheard him. "I'm sorry. Did you just say water balloon fight?" "I did indeed." Harry was clearly enjoying her reaction. "Think about it, Kate. When was the last time any of us did something completely spontaneous and fun? When was the last time William got properly soaked and had a laugh about it?" "Harry, we're not children anymore," Kate began, but even as she said it, she felt a flutter of excitement at the idea. "Exactly. We're adults who have forgotten how to be children. We've forgotten how to play." Harry leaned back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. "Besides, it's going to be nearly 30 degrees today. William will thank us for cooling him off." Kate couldn't help but laugh at his logic. "I think you're overestimating his gratitude." "Perhaps," Harry conceded, "but I'm not overestimating how good it will feel to see him laugh properly for once. Really laugh, not that polite chuckle he's perfected for public events." Kate had to admit that Harry had a point. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen William throw back his head and laugh with genuine abandon. The responsibilities of his position seemed to weigh more heavily on him with each passing year. "Even if I were to consider this ridiculous idea," Kate said slowly, "which I'm not saying I am, How exactly would we manage it? William's schedule is packed today. Ah, but that's the beauty of it, Harry said, pulling out his phone. I happen to know that he has a 1-hour break this afternoon. He always takes a walk through the gardens during his free time. Completely predictable. You've thought this through. I have indeed. I even know the perfect spot. You know that little gazebo by the rose garden? Perfect cover, clear sight lines, and multiple escape routes. Kate shook her head in amazement. You really have thought this through. I'm a military man, Kate. I know the importance of proper planning. This is insane, Kate said, but she was smiling as she said it. Completely insane, Harry agreed cheerfully. Which is exactly why we should do it. Kate looked out over the gardens, imagining the scene Harry was proposing. She thought about William's reaction, the look of complete shock on his face when the first water balloon hit. She thought about his laughter afterward, assuming he would laugh and not have them both banished from the palace. Where would we even get water balloons? She heard herself ask, and realized that she was actually considering this mad scheme. I may have already made a small purchase, Harry admitted, looking slightly sheepish. Just in case you were interested. You bought water balloons? When? This morning. Early. Very early. There's a shop in town that opens at 6 for the market vendors. He paused, then added with a grin, I may have told them I was planning a children's party. Kate burst out laughing. Harry, you actually went and bought water balloons at 6 in the morning. I did, and I have to say, the shop owner was very helpful. He recommended the extra-large ones for maximum impact. I can't believe you're serious about this. Dead serious. Well, as serious as one could be about attacking one's brother with water balloons. Harry stood up and moved to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the gardens. Look, Kate, I know it sounds childish. I know we're all supposed to be dignified and proper, but sometimes I think we forget that we're still family. We're still the people who used to have food fights at private dinners and play practical jokes on each other. Kate joined him at the terrace railing. We did have some good times, didn't we? We did, and we could again. William needs this, Kate. He needs to remember that it's okay to be human sometimes, to be silly and messy and completely undignified. Kate thought about her husband, about the way his shoulders seemed to carry the weight of the future monarchy. She thought about how rare his genuine smiles had become, how carefully he measured every word and every action. He would be so angry, she said softly. At first, Harry agreed, but then he'd laugh. You know he would. And for just a few minutes, he'd feel like himself again instead of the future king. Kate was quiet for a long moment, weighing the idea. It was completely ridiculous, thoroughly undignified, and absolutely the sort of thing that would never appear in any official royal biography, which, she realized, was exactly why it was so appealing. If we were to do this, she said carefully, and I'm still not saying we would need to be very careful about timing, and location, and making sure no photographers are around. Harry's face lit up. So you're considering it? I'm considering the theoretical possibility of considering it, Kate said, but she was smiling as she said it. That's good enough for me. Harry clapped his hands together. Right, so here's what I'm thinking. William usually takes his walk around 2:30. He always follows the same route, through the main garden, around the pond, and then back through the rose garden. The gazebo I mentioned is perfectly positioned along that route. You really have been watching his movements, haven't you? Like I said, proper planning is essential. Harry's enthusiasm was infectious. We could set up at the gazebo around 2:15, give ourselves time to prepare, and make sure the coast is clear. Kate found herself getting caught up in the planning despite herself. What about security? They'll want to know what we're doing. I've already thought of that. I'll tell them we're having a private conversation about charity work. Nothing unusual about that. And after, when William is soaking wet and demanding explanations, Harry shrugged. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Besides, what's the worst he can do? He can hardly have us thrown in the Tower of London for water balloon assault. Kate laughed despite herself. I suppose not. So you'll do it? Kate looked at Harry's eager face, thought about William's increasingly serious demeanor, and made a decision that she would probably regret later. I'll do it, she said. But if this goes badly, I'm blaming you entirely." Harry whooped with joy, startling a pair of ravens that had been pecking at the lawn. "This is going to be brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." "I still think we're both completely mad," Kate said, but she was smiling as she said it. "Probably," Harry agreed. "But it's going to be worth it." As they began to discuss the finer details of their plan, Kate felt a thrill of excitement that she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long time, she was about to do something completely spontaneous, something that had nothing to do with duty or protocol or public image. She was simply going to have fun. The morning sun continued to climb higher, promising the hot day that Harry had predicted. Perfect weather, Kate thought, for a water balloon fight, even if they were all completely insane for planning it. Right then, Harry said, rubbing his hands together, "Operation Soak William is officially underway." Kate shook her head in amazement at what she was about to do, but she couldn't deny the excitement building in her chest. This was going to be either the most fun she'd had in years, or the most trouble she'd ever been in. Possibly both. The remainder of the morning passed in a blur of nervous energy and careful planning. Kate found it nearly impossible to concentrate during her scheduled meetings, her mind constantly drifting to the afternoon's planned ambush. Every time she thought about William's likely reaction, she alternated between fits of giggles and moments of absolute terror at what they were about to do. Her private secretary, Amanda, noticed her distraction during their 11 o'clock briefing about the upcoming charity gala. "Your Royal Highness, are you feeling quite well?" Amanda asked, looking concerned. "You seem rather energetic today." Kate realized she had been drumming her fingers on the desk and bouncing slightly in her chair. "Oh yes, perfectly well. Just excited about this afternoon's events." "The garden photography session? I thought that was rather routine." "Yes, well, you never know what might happen," Kate said, then immediately regretted the comment when Amanda looked puzzled. After the meeting, Kate retreated to her private office and tried to focus on correspondence, but her thoughts kept returning to Harry's elaborate plan. She wondered if he was having second thoughts, or if he was somewhere in the palace filling water balloons and cackling to himself. Around noon, her phone buzzed with a text message from Harry. "Supply acquisition complete. T-minus 2.5 hours. Are you having second thoughts?" Kate stared at the message for a long moment, her finger hovering over the reply button. She could still back out. She could text him back and tell him she'd come to her senses, that this was too risky, too childish, too likely to end in disaster. Instead, she typed back, "No second thoughts. See you at the rendezvous point." Harry's response was immediate. "That's my girl. This is going to be legendary." Kate set down her phone and tried to return to her work, but concentration remained elusive. She found herself looking out the window toward the gardens, imagining the afternoon's events playing out. She pictured William's shock, his indignation, and, hopefully, eventually, his laughter. At 1 o'clock, she had lunch with her lady-in-waiting, Sarah, who had been with her for several years and knew her moods well. "You're practically vibrating with excitement," Sarah observed over their salads. "What's out into you today?" "Just looking forward to this afternoon," Kate replied, trying to sound casual. "The photography session? It's just some routine shots for the charity newsletter." Kate nearly choked on her water. She had completely forgotten about the legitimate photography session scheduled for later. "Oh yes, of course. Though I might be a bit delayed for that." Sarah raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. Kate was grateful for her discretion, though she suspected Sarah sensed something was afoot. At 2 o'clock, Kate excused herself from her office, claiming she needed some fresh air before the photography session. She made her way through the palace corridors, her heart beating faster with each step. She felt like a schoolgirl sneaking out of class, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The gardens were quiet in the afternoon heat. Most of the staff were indoors during the hottest part of the day, which would work perfectly for their purposes. Kate made her way along the winding path toward the rose garden, every sense heightened by nervous anticipation. She found Harry already positioned behind the gazebo, crouched behind a large planter filled with roses. He had changed into darker clothing and looked every inch the military strategist planning an operation. The sight was so ridiculous that Kate had to bite back a laugh. "Status report," she whispered as she crouched beside him. "All systems go," Harry whispered back, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "I've done a full reconnaissance. No gardeners in the immediate area, no security patrols scheduled for the next 30 minutes, and no sign of photographers." Kate looked around the gazebo and saw a large bucket filled with colorful water balloons, along with what appeared to be several water guns as backup ammunition. "Harry, where did you get all of this?" she hissed. "I may have made a few additional purchases," he admitted sheepishly. "I wanted to be prepared for all contingencies. This looks like enough to wage a small war. Well, we are attacking the future King of England. I thought we should go big or go home." Kate shook her head in amazement. "You realize we're both completely insane, don't you?" "Absolutely. But it's the best kind of insane." Harry checked his watch. T-minus 10 minutes. William should be starting his walk any moment now. As if summoned by his words, they heard the sound of footsteps on gravel in the distance. Kate's heart leaped into her throat as she realized there was no turning back now. "That's him," Harry whispered, peering around the edge of the planter. "Right on schedule, just like I said." Kate crept forward to get her own view. Sure enough, there was William, walking at his usual measured pace along the garden path. He was dressed in a light blue shirt and khaki trousers, looking every inch the composed future monarch. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his expression was thoughtful, probably processing some matter of state importance. "He looks so serious," Kate whispered. "Exactly why this is necessary," Harry replied, hefting a particularly large water balloon. "We're performing a public service." Kate grabbed her own ammunition, surprised by how heavy the water balloon felt in her hand. "I can't believe we're actually doing this." "Having second thoughts?" Harry asked, though he was clearly hoping the answer was no. Kate watched her husband approaching their position, completely unaware of what awaited him. She thought about all the stress he'd been under lately, all the weight of responsibility he carried on his shoulders. Maybe Harry was right. Maybe he didn't need this reminder that life didn't always have to be so serious. "No second thoughts," she said firmly. "Let's do this." Harry grinned and positioned himself at the corner of the gazebo. "Wait for my signal. I'll take the first shot, then we unleash everything we've got." William was now less than 20 yards away, still walking at that same measured pace. Kate could see his profile clearly, the concentrated expression, the slight furrow in his brow that had become more pronounced in recent months. 15 yards. 10 yards. Harry raised his water balloon, took careful aim, and whispered, "For the good of the monarchy." He let fly. The water balloon sailed through the air in a perfect arc, catching the afternoon sunlight like a translucent jewel. Kate watched in fascination as it descended toward her unsuspecting husband, feeling time slow to a crawl. It hit William squarely in the chest with a satisfying splash, soaking the front of his shirt and causing him to stagger backward in complete shock. For a moment, he simply stood there, mouth agape, staring down at his dripping shirt as if he couldn't quite process what had just happened. "Now!" Harry shouted, abandoning all pretense of stealth. Kate didn't need to be told twice. She launched her own water balloon, which caught William on the shoulder just as he was looking up to see where the first attack had come from. Harry was already throwing his second balloon, which exploded against William's back as he tried to dodge. The future King of England stood in the middle of the garden path, soaking wet and completely dumbfounded as his wife and brother emerged from behind the gazebo with arms full of water balloons. "Surprise!" Harry called out cheerfully, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. William's expression cycled through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, confusion, disbelief, and then something that Kate couldn't quite read. For a terrifying moment, she wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. "What on earth?" William began, but his words were cut off as Kate launched another balloon that caught him on the thigh. "Sorry, darling," she called out, though she was giggling too hard to sound particularly apologetic. "Harry's idea." "Of course it was," William muttered, but Kate caught something in his voice that might have been amusement. Harry was already winding up for another throw. "Don't just stand there, brother. Fight back." "Fight back with what?" William demanded, water dripping from his hair. "I don't exactly carry water balloons on my afternoon walks." "Check behind the bench," Harry called out, launching another balloon that William actually managed to dodge this time. William looked where Harry had indicated and saw another bucket of balloons they had strategically placed along his usual route. His expression shifted again, this time definitely toward amusement. "You planned this," he said accusingly, but he was moving toward the backup ammunition. "Thoroughly," Harry confirmed, ducking as William grabbed a balloon and immediately returned fire with surprising accuracy. The balloon caught Harry in the shoulder, spinning him around and drenching his shirt. "Excellent form," he laughed. "I knew those cricket skills would come in handy." What followed was utter chaos. The carefully maintained dignity of the royal garden was abandoned as three adults chased each other around the landscaping, hurling water balloons with abandon. William proved to be a formidable opponent once he committed to the battle, his athletic background serving him well as he dodged incoming fire and returned it with interest. Kate found herself laughing so hard she could barely aim, tears streaming down her face as she watched her dignified husband duck behind a rose bush like a commando. Harry was whooping with joy, clearly delighted that his plan was working even better than he had hoped. "Take that," William shouted as he scored a direct hit on Kate, who shrieked with laughter and shock at the cold water. "No targeting the Duchess," Harry protested, immediately launching two balloons in retaliation. "All's fair in love and water warfare," William replied, but he was laughing now, really laughing, in a way Kate hadn't seen in months. The battle raged for nearly 10 minutes, ranging across the garden as they used benches, planters, and topiary as cover. Water balloons flew through the air like colorful artillery, exploding against trees, statues, and occasionally their intended targets. Kate was crouched behind a large fountain, reloading her ammunition, when she heard footsteps approaching on a gravel path. Her blood ran cold as she realized someone was coming. "Cease fire," she hissed urgently. "Someone's coming." Harry and William immediately froze. William still holding a balloon mid-throw, Harry crouched behind a hedge with his arm cocked back. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by voices. Kate recognized the tone, if not the words, staff members making their rounds. In about 30 seconds, they would round the corner and discover the future king of England soaking wet and surrounded by the debris of water balloons. "Hi," Harry whispered urgently. All three of them dove for cover, Kate behind the fountain, Harry behind his hedge, and William behind the bench where they had stashed his ammunition. Kate pressed herself against the cold stone of the fountain, hardly daring to breathe as the voices grew closer. She caught William's eye across the garden and saw her own panic reflected there. What had seemed like innocent fun moments before now felt like a scandal waiting to happen. She could already imagine the headlines: Royal Water Fight Chaos, Duchess and Prince in Balloon Brawl. The voices were very close now, just around the corner. Kate held her breath, wondering how on earth they were going to explain this if they were discovered. And then, just as suddenly as they had approached, the voices began to fade. The staff members had apparently turned down a different path, their conversation growing distant as they moved away from the garden. For several long minutes, none of them moved. Kate stayed pressed against the fountain, listening intently for any sign that the staff might return. Finally, Harry's voice broke the silence. "I think we're clear," he whispered. Slowly, cautiously, they emerged from their hiding places. They looked at each other across the garden. Three adults, soaking wet, surrounded by the colorful remnants of burst balloons, looking like children caught in the act of some tremendous mischief. And then William started to laugh. It began as a chuckle, then grew into a full-bodied laugh that echoed across the garden. Kate had never heard him laugh like that, completely uninhibited and joyful. Harry joined in, and then Kate, until all three of them were laughing so hard they had to sit down on the wet garden path. "I can't believe we just did that," William gasped between fits of laughter. I can't believe you hid behind a fountain, Harry managed to say. Very undignified behavior for a future king. Look who's talking, William shot back. You were cowering behind a hedge like a common criminal. Kate wiped tears of laughter from her eyes, looking at the two men she cared about most in the world. William's hair was plastered to his head, his shirt completely soaked, and he had never looked happier. We're all completely mad, she said, but she was smiling as she said it. The best kind of mad, Harry agreed, echoing his earlier words. William stood up and looked around the chaos they had created. Water balloon fragments littered the pristine garden. The fountain was splashed with water, and there were several suspicious wet patches on nearby trees and statues. We should probably clean this up before anyone sees it, he said, though he didn't sound particularly concerned. Already on it, Harry said, producing a large trash bag from somewhere behind the hedge. I told you I planned for all contingencies. As they began to collect the balloon remnants, Kate felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sun. This was what family felt like, she realized. Not the formal dinners and official events, but this three people who cared about each other enough to be completely ridiculous together. Thank you, William said quietly as they worked side by side. For what? Kate asked, though she thought she knew. For reminding me how to laugh, he said simply. Harry looked up from the balloon fragments he was collecting. Don't thank us yet. Wait until you see what we have planned for next week. William and Kate both stared at him in alarm. Kidding, Harry said quickly, though his grin suggested he might not be entirely joking. Probably. As they finished cleaning up the evidence of their water balloon war, Kate realized that this would be one of her favorite memories of royal life. Not the grand ceremonies or state occasions, but this perfectly imperfect afternoon when they had forgotten to be anything other than family. The sun continued to shine down on the garden as they made their way back toward the palace, still damp but thoroughly happy. Kate caught William's eye and saw that the stress lines around his eyes had softened, at least for now. Sometimes, she thought, the most important royal duties had nothing to do with crowns or protocol. Sometimes they were as simple as reminding someone you love how to laugh. The aftermath of their water balloon ambush proved to be almost as entertaining as the attack itself. As they made their way back toward the palace, still dripping and trying to suppress fits of laughter, Kate suddenly remembered her forgotten photography session. Oh no, she groaned, stopping dead in her tracks. Sarah is going to wonder where I am. I was supposed to be back 10 minutes ago. William wrung water from the bottom of his shirt, still grinning from their adventure. I think you might need a few minutes to make yourself presentable first. Kate caught sight of her reflection in one of the ornamental garden mirrors placed along the path. Her hair was plastered to her head, her makeup had mostly washed away, and her blouse was completely transparent from the water. She looked like she had just emerged from a swimming pool. I look like I've been in a hurricane, she laughed, trying to smooth down her hair. A very fun hurricane, Harry added, wringing out his own soaked polo shirt. Though I have to say, we should probably develop a better exit strategy for next time. Next time? William asked, raising an eyebrow, though he was still smiling. Oh, there's definitely going to be a next time, Harry said with confidence. This was far too much fun to be a one-off event. Kate was about to respond when they heard voices approaching from the direction of the palace. All three of them froze, suddenly aware that they looked like they had been involved in some sort of aquatic disaster. Quick, William whispered, act natural. Natural? Kate hissed back. We're soaking wet in the middle of a garden with no fountain or pond in sight. How exactly do we act natural? Before anyone could answer, two palace staff members rounded the corner, deep in conversation about catering arrangements for an upcoming event. They looked up and immediately did double takes at the sight of three very wet royals standing in the middle of the garden path. Your Royal Highnesses, the first staff member managed, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. Is everything quite all right? You appear to be damp. Kate opened her mouth to respond, but found herself at a complete loss for words. How did one explain a water balloon fight to palace staff without sounding completely unhinged? William, however, stepped forward with the kind of regal composure that came from years of training in handling unexpected situations. Yes, quite all right, thank you. We had a small incident with the sprinkler system. Caught us completely off guard. The staff members nodded solemnly, though Kate caught one of them glancing around for evidence of any sprinkler system in the immediate area. There wasn't one, of course, but they were too well trained to question the prince's explanation. Would you like us to fetch some towels, Your Royal Highness? The second staff member offered. That would be most appreciated, William replied graciously. We'll be along presently. The staff members bowed and hurried off toward the palace, clearly eager to spread the story of the mysterious sprinkler incident. Kate waited until they were out of earshot before bursting into laughter again. The sprinkler system? She managed between giggles. That's the best you could come up with. It seemed plausible at the time, William defended, though he was laughing too. What would you have preferred? That I told them we were attacked by water balloons? By your own wife and brother, no less, Harry added cheerfully. That would have made for some interesting palace gossip. They began walking toward the palace again, their wet shoes squelching slightly on the gravel path. Kate was dreading the moment she would have to face her staff and explain her disheveled appearance, but she found she didn't care as much as she probably should have. You know, William said thoughtfully as they approached the palace entrance, I haven't laughed like that in months. I noticed, Kate said gently. You've been carrying quite a lot of weight lately. William was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in responsibilities. Every decision feels monumentous. Every public appearance feels like a test. I'd forgotten that it was possible to just be silly. Being silly is highly underrated, Harry observed. The military taught me a lot of things, but one of the most important lessons was that you have to find ways to laugh, especially when things get heavy. Otherwise, you'll crack under the pressure. They entered the palace through one of the side doors, hoping to avoid running into too many people before they could change into dry clothes. Their luck, however, ran out almost immediately. Good God, what happened to you three? The voice belonged to Princess, who was striding down the corridor with her usual brisk efficiency. She stopped short at the sight of them, her eyebrows rising in surprise. Sprinkler malfunction, William said automatically, apparently having decided that this was his official story and he was sticking to it, and looked at them skeptically. All three of you were caught by the same malfunctioning sprinkler? It was a very large sprinkler, Harry offered helpfully. With excellent coverage, Kate added, trying not to laugh, and studied them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to their surprise, her mouth twitched slightly upward. Well, whatever happened, it seems to have done you all some good. I haven't seen William smile like that in ages. With that observation, she continued down the corridor, leaving the three of them standing in a puddle of water and surprise. Did she just? Kate began. I think she knew exactly what happened, William finished, and approved. Your sister is terrifying, Harry said admiringly, in the best possible way. They made their way to their respective quarters to change clothes, agreeing to meet later to discuss the success of their mission. Kate slipped into her private chambers, grateful to finally be out of public view. Her lady-in-waiting, Sarah, was waiting with a concerned expression and a stack of towels. Ma'am, the staff said you had an encounter with a sprinkler system? Sarah's tone was carefully neutral, but Kate could see the curiosity in her eyes. Something like that, Kate replied, accepting a towel gratefully. I'm afraid I'm going to be rather late for the photography session. I've already rescheduled it for tomorrow, Sarah said efficiently. I thought you might need some time to recover from your encounter with the landscaping equipment. Kate looked at Sarah sharply, wondering how much she actually knew or suspected. But Sarah's expression remained professionally neutral, even as she handed Kate a fresh change of clothes. Thank you, Sarah. You're always so understanding about these unexpected situations. Of course, ma'am. Will there be anything else? Just if anyone asks about this afternoon. The sprinkler incident, Sarah's tone was perfectly innocent. I'm sure no one will think anything of it. These old systems can be quite unpredictable. Kate smiled, recognizing that Sarah was diplomatically offering to support whatever version of events they chose to tell. It was one of the things she valued most about her staff, their discretion and loyalty, even in the face of inexplicable royal behavior. After Sarah left, Kate took a long, hot shower, washing the last evidence of their water balloon battle from her hair. As she stood under the warm water, she reflected on the afternoon's events. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so spontaneous, so free from the weight of her public role. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Harry. Mission accomplished. William is humming. Actually humming. I haven't heard him hum in years. Kate smiled as she typed back. Worth every soaking second. Harry's response came immediately. Agreed. Same time next week. Kate stared at the message, torn between horror and excitement at the prospect. Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed back, I'll bring the reinforcements. Later that evening, Kate joined William for dinner in their private dining room. He had changed into a fresh shirt, and his hair was dry, but there was something different about his demeanor. He seemed lighter somehow, more relaxed than she had seen him in months. How was the rest of your afternoon? She asked as they settled in for their meal. Surprisingly productive, William replied, cutting into his chicken. I had 3 meetings that I was dreading, but I found myself actually enjoying them. Strange how a change in perspective can affect everything. Kate smiled, pleased that their ridiculous adventure had had the intended effect. Harry will be delighted to hear that his unconventional stress management technique was successful. Arias technique. William raised an eyebrow. As I recall, you were an enthusiastic participant in the assault. That water balloon to my shoulder was particularly well aimed. I may have gotten caught up in a moment, Kate admitted, though she was grinning as she said it. You certainly did. I haven't seen you laugh like that since, well, probably since our wedding day. The comment made Kate pause. He was right. She hadn't realized how much of her own joy had been subdued by the weight of royal protocol and public expectations. The freedom to be completely silly, to act without thinking about cameras or consequences, had been incredibly liberating. Maybe we all need more moments like that, she said thoughtfully. Times when we can just be ourselves, without worrying about dignity or protocol. William nodded, then grinned mischievously. Though I do think Harry's suggestion of making it a weekly event might be a bit excessive. You say that now, Kate laughed, but wait until you see what he has planned for next time. Next time? William's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Oh yes, there's definitely going to be a next time. Harry's already planning some sort of escalation involving reinforcements, whatever that means. William groaned, but he was smiling as he did it. What have we gotten ourselves into? The most fun we've had in years, Kate replied honestly. As they finished their dinner, Kate felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the food or wine. The afternoon's water balloon fight had been about more than just soaking each other with cold water. It had been about remembering who they were beneath all the titles and expectations, about connecting as family rather than as royal figures. Her phone buzzed with another message from Harry. By the way, I may have accidentally mentioned to the Queen that you two seemed particularly happy this afternoon. She's very curious about this sprinkler malfunction that has put everyone in such good spirits. Kate showed the message to William, who promptly choked on his wine. The Queen knows? He sputtered. Kate's phone buzzed again. Don't worry, I think she approves. She said something about young people needing to have more fun. Also, she wants to know if modern sprinkler systems are really that powerful. I may have oversold the pressure capabilities. William buried his face in his hands. We're going to have to explain irrigation technology to the Queen. Could be worse, Kate pointed out cheerfully. We could have to explain water balloon warfare techniques. William looked up at her through his fingers. Please tell me you're not actually considering Harry's escalation plans. Kate's innocent smile was all the answer he needed. God help us all, he muttered, but he was laughing as he said it. As they left the dining room, Kate reflected on how a single afternoon of complete silliness had transformed the atmosphere of their entire household. The staff seemed more relaxed. William was humming under his breath, and even the palace itself seemed to have a lighter energy. Sometimes, she realized, The most important royal duties had nothing to do with state affairs or public appearances. Sometimes they were as simple as reminding the people you love that laughter is the most powerful antidote to the weight of responsibility. And sometimes those duties involved an extensive arsenal of water balloons. Kate made a mental note to text Harry back about those reinforcements. She had some ideas of her own. 3 days after their first water balloon ambush, Kate found herself in an extraordinary position. Word of their sprinkler incident had spread throughout the palace staff, and she had begun to notice a curious phenomenon. People were smiling more. It started with the housekeeping staff, who seemed to find excuses to linger near the gardens where the alleged sprinkler malfunction had occurred. Then the kitchen staff began asking innocent questions about irrigation systems and water pressure. Even a usually serious palace security team seemed to have developed an inexplicable interest in landscaping equipment. Kate was reviewing correspondence in her study when Sarah knocked and entered with her morning tea and a barely suppressed smile. "Ma'am, I thought you should know that 3 separate staff members have asked me about getting a recommendation for a good sprinkler repair service," Sarah said, setting down the tea tray with careful precision. "Have they indeed?" Kate replied, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Yes, ma'am. Apparently, there's been quite a lot of discussion about the unpredictable nature of automated watering systems. Very educational conversations, from what I understand." Kate caught the subtle emphasis on educational and realized that Sarah knew perfectly well what had actually happened in the garden. The woman was far too observant to be fooled by their improvised explanation. "Well, I suppose it's good that the staff are taking an interest in garden maintenance," Kate said carefully. "Indeed, ma'am. Though I should mention that Prince Harry has been asking about your schedule for this afternoon. Something about reviewing security protocols for outdoor events." Kate's teacup paused halfway to her lips. "Security protocols?" That's what he said, though he seemed unusually cheerful about it. He also asked specifically about Prince William's afternoon walk schedule. Kate set down her cup, a mixture of excitement and alarm coursing through her. She had expected Harry to plan some sort of follow-up to their successful mission, but she hadn't anticipated it would be so soon. Did he happen to mention what kind of security protocols he wanted to review? Sarah's expression remained perfectly professional, but Kate caught a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. "He was somewhat vague, ma'am, though he did ask if we had any emergency towels stored in the garden pavilions." Kate nearly choked on her tea. "Emergency towels? For unexpected weather events," he said. "Apparently, it's a standard military precaution." "Of course it is," Kate murmured, recognizing Harry's handiwork in this creative explanation. "Thank you for letting me know, Sarah. I suppose I should review these security protocols with him. Shall I clear your schedule for this afternoon, ma'am?" "Yes, I think that would be wise." "And, Sarah, perhaps it would be best if these security reviews remained confidential for now." "Naturally, ma'am. Palace security is always a sensitive matter." After Sarah left, Kate immediately texted Harry. "Emergency towels? Really?" His response was swift. "Military precision requires proper supply management. Meet at the usual coordinates at 1,400 hours." Kate shook her head in amazement. Harry had apparently decided to treat their water balloon warfare like an actual military operation, complete with tactical terminology and supply chains. She found herself both alarmed and impressed by his dedication to the cause. Her phone buzzed again with another message from Harry. "P.S. Bring Wellington boots. The battlefield may be muddy." "Battlefield?" Kate muttered to herself, though she was smiling as she said it. She had a feeling that whatever Harry had planned would make their first ambush look like a gentle garden sprinkle. At exactly 2 o'clock, Kate made her way to the rose garden, this time wearing practical shoes and clothing that she wouldn't mind getting soaked. She found Harry already in position, but this time he wasn't alone. "Kate!" A cheerful voice called out, and she turned to see Princess Eugenie emerging from behind a large topiary, grinning widely and holding what appeared to be a water gun. "Eugenie?" Kate stared in amazement. "What are you doing here?" "Harry recruited me for the reinforcements," Eugenie explained, clearly delighted to be part of the conspiracy. He said you needed backup for the next phase of Operation Soak William. Kate turned to Harry with raised eyebrows. You told her about Operation Soak William? She was asking too many questions about why I was buying garden supplies, Harry defended. Besides, we needed someone on the inside who could provide intelligence about William's schedule. Intelligence. Kate was beginning to realize that their simple water balloon fight had evolved into something much more elaborate. Oh yes, Eugenie said enthusiastically. I've been tracking his movements all week. Did you know he always checks the weather before his afternoon walk? And he's been unusually cheerful lately, which means he might be expecting something. Kate looked around the garden and noticed several strategically placed buckets and what appeared to be a complex system of rope and pulleys attached to the trees. Harry, what exactly have you built here? Harry's grin was positively diabolical. Welcome to Water Balloon Command Center, Phase 2. We've upgraded our capabilities since the last engagement. He gestured proudly to his elaborate setup. There were multiple ammunition stations positioned around the garden, a series of water balloons suspended from tree branches on a pulley system, and what looked like several super soakers hidden behind various pieces of garden furniture. This is insane, Kate said, though she was already feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. Insanely brilliant, Eugenie corrected. Harry's been planning this like an actual military campaign. He even drew up maps. Harry produced a hand-drawn diagram of the garden, complete with tactical positions marked in different colored ink. The beauty of this system is that we can maintain sustained fire from multiple positions while remaining mobile. William won't know what hit him. Kate studied the diagram, impressed despite herself by the level of detail. You've really thought this through. I told you, proper planning is essential. Plus, after our success the other day, I figured we needed to raise the stakes. What if he doesn't come? Kate asked, though she was already mentally positioning herself at one of the marked tactical positions. Oh, he'll come, Eugenie said confidently. I may have mentioned that you seemed a bit stressed lately and suggested he take his usual walk to check on you. Kate stared at her cousin-in-law. You manipulated him into walking into our ambush. Tactical misdirection, Harry corrected proudly. Military strategy at its finest. You're both completely mad, Kate said, but she was already moving toward one of the ammunition stations. The best kind of mad, Harry and Eugenie said in unison, then looked at each other and burst out laughing. Kate spent the next 10 minutes familiarizing herself with Harry's elaborate setup. The pulley system allowed them to deploy water balloons from above, while the hidden super soakers provided backup firepower. The multiple ammunition stations meant they could maintain their attack, even if William tried to flee. This is either going to be the most successful ambush in royal history, or we're all going to end up in serious trouble, Kate observed, testing the range on one of the water guns. Probably both, Eugenie said cheerfully, but it'll be worth it to see William's face. At precisely 2:30, they heard the familiar sound of footsteps on gravel. Harry immediately shifted into command mode, whispering tactical instructions like a battlefield general. Positions, everyone. Kate, take the eastern flank. Eugenie, you're on the pulley system. I'll take point position and initiate contact. They scrambled to their designated spots, Kate crouching behind a large planter with a super soaker, Eugenie positioned at the rope controls near the trees, and Harry at his original position behind the gazebo with what appeared to be a military-grade water weapon. William appeared around the corner right on schedule, walking at his usual measured pace. He looked relaxed and happy, probably still feeling the effects of their previous encounter. Kate almost felt guilty about what they were about to do to him. Almost. Target acquired, Harry whispered. Wait for my signal. William was halfway across the garden when Harry stood up and called out cheerfully, "Beautiful afternoon for a walk, brother." William turned toward Harry's voice, a smile beginning to form on his face. "Harry, I was just thinking about the other day. That sprinkler incident was quite..." His words were cut off as Harry triggered the pulley system, sending a cascade of water balloons raining down from the tree branches above. William looked up in shock, just in time to receive a direct hit from 3 balloons simultaneously. "Ambush!" Harry yelled, apparently abandoning any pretense of stealth. Kate and Eugenie immediately opened fire with their water guns, catching William in a crossfire of high-pressure streams. He spun around, trying to locate his attackers, but the multiple angles of attack left him completely confused about where the assault was coming from. "This is mutiny," he shouted, though he was already laughing as he tried to dodge the incoming fire. "Revolution," Eugenie called back, clearly enjoying her role in the rebellion. William managed to spot one of the hidden ammunition stations and made a dash for it, but Harry had anticipated this move. As soon as William reached for the bucket of balloons, Harry triggered another section of the pulley system, drenching him from above. "You planned for everything," William accused, grabbing ammunition despite his soaked condition. "Military precision," Harry replied, ducking behind his cover as William began returning fire with impressive accuracy. What followed was the most elaborate water fight in royal history. William proved to be a quick learner, using the garden's natural cover to his advantage and developing countertactics on the fly. He managed to capture one of the ammunition stations and turn it into a fortress, holding off their attacks while planning his own offensive. Kate found herself genuinely impressed by William's strategic thinking. Despite being outnumbered and caught completely off guard, he managed to organize an effective defense and even launched several successful counterattacks. "He's better at this than I expected," she called out to Harry during a brief lull in the fighting. "Military training runs in the family," Harry replied, reloading his water gun. "But we still have the advantage of superior firepower." "Don't be so sure about that," William called from his captured position. "I found your supply depot." Kate looked toward William's position and groaned. He had discovered Harry's main ammunition storage area and was already arming himself with some of the larger water weapons. "Fall back," Harry ordered. "Tactical retreat." The three conspirators abandoned their positions and ran for the secondary cover Harry had prepared deeper in the garden. Behind them, William's triumphant laughter echoed across the grounds. "You can run, but you can't hide," he called after them, his voice full of joy and competitive spirit. Kate couldn't remember the last time she had run through a garden while being chased by her husband with water balloons, but she found the experience surprisingly exhilarating. The formality of royal life seemed very far away as they splashed through puddles and dove behind ornamental shrubbery. Harry's secondary position proved to be even more elaborate than his first, with additional pulley systems and what appeared to be a water cannon constructed from garden hoses and PVC pipe. "Is that actually functional?" Kate asked, staring at Harry's contraption. "Only one way to find out," Harry replied, taking aim at William's approaching figure. The water cannon worked spectacularly, sending a massive stream of water across the garden that caught William mid-charge and sent him staggering backward with a whoop of surprise and laughter. "Where did you get a water cannon?" William demanded, shaking water from his hair. "Military surplus," Harry called back proudly. "Well, technically it's a modified irrigation system, but the effect is the same." Eugenie was doubled over with laughter at the sight of her cousin dripping wet and looking completely astounded. "Your face," she managed between giggles. "You look like you've been hit by a fire hose." "I think I was hit by a fire hose," William replied, but he was grinning as he said it. The battle continued for another 20 minutes, ranging across the entire garden as they utilized Harry's various tactical installations. By the end, all four of them were completely soaked, exhausted, and laughing so hard they could barely stand. They finally called a ceasefire when they heard voices approaching from the palace. The cleanup operation that followed was even more elaborate than the battle itself, as they worked together to dismantle Harry's various water warfare contraptions and hide the evidence of their elaborate ambush. Next time, William panted as he helped coil up the garden hoses. "I want advance notice so I can prepare my own defenses." "Next time?" Kate asked, raising an eyebrow. "Oh yes," William said with determination. "I'm not going down without a proper fight again. You three may have caught me off guard today, but I'll be ready for you next time." Harry and Eugenie exchanged delighted glances. Their mission to get William to embrace his playful side had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. As they made their way back to the palace, dripping wet but thoroughly satisfied, Kate realized that their water balloon warfare had become something more than just a stress relief activity. It had become a family tradition, a way for them to connect and remember who they were beyond their royal roles. And, judging by the calculating look in William's eyes as he planned his revenge, it was a tradition that was only going to get more elaborate from here. The following week brought an unexpected development that none of them had anticipated. Word of their elaborate water balloon campaigns had somehow reached the highest levels of the royal household, though not through any channel they had expected. Kate was in her study, reviewing invitations for upcoming charity events, when her private secretary entered with an expression that was equal parts amusement and bewilderment. "Ma'am, I have a rather unusual message for you," Sarah began, setting down a formal envelope bearing the Queen's personal seal. Kate's heart stopped. "The Queen." "Yes, ma'am. Her Majesty requests your presence, along with Prince William and Prince Harry, for tea this afternoon. She specifically mentioned something about discussing innovative stress management techniques." Kate stared at the elegant envelope, her mind racing through the possible implications. Did she say anything else? Sarah's professional composure wavered slightly. She may have mentioned something about being impressed by the creativity of recent irrigation solutions in the palace gardens. "Oh God," Kate muttered, suddenly, understanding that their cover story had been thoroughly seen through by the one person whose opinion mattered most. An hour later, Kate found herself walking through the corridor toward the Queen's private sitting room, flanked by William and Harry. All three of them looked like they were heading to their own execution. "How do you think she found out?" William whispered, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. "Could have been anyone," Harry replied grimly. "Half the palace staff have been talking about our sprinkler incidents. Someone was bound to piece it together. Maybe she just wants to discuss actual sprinkler systems," Kate suggested hopefully, though even she didn't believe it. They paused outside the sitting room door, all three of them taking deep breaths like soldiers preparing for battle. The irony was not lost on Kate that their water balloon warfare had led them to face a more intimidating opponent than they had ever encountered on any battlefield. The Queen's private butler opened the door and announced them with his usual formal precision. Her Majesty, Prince William, Prince Harry, and the Duchess of Cambridge. They entered to find the Queen seated in her favorite armchair, looking every inch the monarch in a pale blue dress and pearls. But there was something in her expression that Kate couldn't quite read, not anger exactly, but definitely amusement. "Please sit down," the Queen said, gesturing to the chairs arranged across from her. "I understand you've all been quite busy lately." They sat down carefully, each of them waiting for the other to speak first. The silence stretched uncomfortably until the Queen continued. "I've been hearing some fascinating reports about the garden maintenance lately. Apparently, we've had some very interesting problems with our irrigation systems." William cleared his throat nervously. "Ma'am, I can explain." The Queen held up a hand to stop him. "Before you begin explaining, let me share something with you. Do you know how I learned about your irrigation problems?" They shook their heads silently. "The garden staff came to me," the Queen said, and Kate felt her heart sink even further. They were concerned because they couldn't find any evidence of sprinkler malfunctions, despite the repeated reports of people being soaked in the gardens. "Ma'am," Harry began, but the Queen continued. "So I asked them to investigate. What they found was quite interesting. Water balloon fragments, empty buckets, and what appeared to be an elaborate pulley system constructed in the oak trees." Kate closed her eyes, waiting for the royal displeasure to descend upon them. "They also reported," the Queen continued, "that palace morale has been higher in the past week than it has been in months. The staff have been more cheerful, more energetic, and significantly more creative in their problem-solving approaches." Kate opened her eyes in surprise. That wasn't what she had expected to hear. The Queen's expression softened slightly. "They also said that Prince William has been more relaxed and pleasant to work with than they've seen him in years." William shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Ma'am, I can only apologize. Apologize? The Queen interrupted, raising an eyebrow. For what? For the undignified behavior, William said miserably. For acting in a manner unbefitting our positions. The Queen was quiet for a moment, studying all three of them with the sharp intelligence that had made her one of the most respected monarchs in history. Then, to their complete amazement, she smiled. Let me tell you something about dignity, she said, her voice taking on a warmer tone. True dignity isn't about never getting your clothes wet or never laughing too loudly. True dignity is about remembering who you are at your core, especially when the weight of duty threatens to make you forget. Kate felt tears prick at her eyes, touched by the unexpected wisdom and understanding in the Queen's words. When I was young, the Queen continued, my sister Margaret and I used to have elaborate practical joke wars that drove our parents to distraction. We once filled the Archbishop of Canterbury's umbrella with confetti before a garden party. Harry's eyes widened. You didn't. We did indeed. He opened it during the processional, and pink and gold confetti rained down on half the clergy. The Queen's eyes twinkled with mischief that reminded Kate strongly of Harry's own expression when he was plotting something. It took 3 hours to clean confetti out of the bishop's ceremonial robes. What did your parents say? Kate asked, fascinated by this glimpse into the Queen's childhood. My mother was furious, the Queen replied. But my father laughed until he cried. He said that anyone who could organize such an elaborate prank clearly had the organizational skills necessary for statecraft. William looked stunned. I had no idea you and Aunt Margaret were so mischievous. The point, the Queen said, setting down her teacup with a decisive click, is that joy and laughter are not incompatible with royal duty. In fact, they're essential to it. A monarch who has forgotten how to laugh has forgotten how to connect with their people. She turned her attention specifically to William. You've been carrying the weight of the future very seriously lately, William. Perhaps too seriously. I want to be worthy of the responsibility, William said quietly. And you will be. But worthiness doesn't require the sacrifice of your humanity. The best kings in our history were those who understood that strength comes from connection, not isolation. The Queen stood up and moved to the window overlooking the gardens. Now, I understand that your stress management techniques have been quite creative. Tell me about this water balloon warfare system I've been hearing about. Kate, William, and Harry exchanged glances, unsure whether this was a trap or genuine interest. Well, Harry began hesitantly. It started as a simple water balloon fight, but it kind of escalated. Escalated how? Pulley systems, Kate admitted. And water cannons. Harry built water cannons. The Queen turned back from a window with obvious delight. Water cannons? How marvelous. Did they work? Spectacularly, William said, and Kate caught the hint of pride in his voice despite himself. I see, and I suppose you've all learned valuable lessons about teamwork and strategic planning. Actually, yes, Harry said, warming to the topic. William's tactical adaptations were brilliant. He managed to turn a 3-on-1 disadvantage into an effective defense system using the garden's natural terrain. The Queen nodded approvingly. Military strategy is an important skill for future kings, even if it's applied to water balloon combat. Kate couldn't believe what she was hearing. Not only was the Queen not angry about their elaborate pranks, she seemed to actively approve of them. However, the Queen continued, and Kate felt her heart sink again, waiting for the inevitable restrictions. I do think your current approach lacks proper organization. A truly effective stress management program should have regular scheduling and clear objectives. Kate, William, and Harry stared at her in confusion. The Queen returned to her chair and fixed them with a look that was pure royal command. Therefore, I am officially designating Sunday afternoons as family recreational time. You will meet in the gardens each week for activities designed to promote relaxation and family bonding. You're making our water balloon fights official royal events? Kate managed to ask. I'm making family time a priority, the Queen corrected. The specific activities are entirely up to you, though I do hope you'll continue with the water balloon warfare. It sounds quite invigorating. Harry looked like he might faint from joy. You're serious? Completely serious. I may even participate occasionally, schedule permitting. The image of the Queen of England wielding a super soaker was so absurd that Kate had to bite her lip to keep from laughing out loud. There is one condition, the Queen added, and they all tensed again. Yes, ma'am. William asked. Next time you construct any elaborate tactical installations, please inform the garden staff in advance. They were quite concerned about the structural integrity of the oak trees when they discovered your pulley systems. We'll coordinate with maintenance, Harry promised solemnly. Excellent. Now, I believe you have a regularly scheduled stress management session planned for this afternoon. Kate realized that somehow their secret water balloon rebellion had not only been discovered and approved by the Queen, but had been elevated to the status of an official royal family activity. Yes, ma'am, she said, still slightly dazed by the turn of events. Wonderful. I'll be watching from the blue drawing room windows. I understand today's scenario involves some sort of castle siege. Harry had apparently been planning their next battle, while Kate wasn't paying attention. Yes, ma'am. Full medieval siege warfare, adapted for water balloon combat. How creative. I do enjoy a good siege. Carry on, then. They rose to leave, still somewhat stunned by the conversation. As they reached the door, the Queen called out one final comment. Oh, and Harry? Next time you need to purchase military supplies, do let the household staff know. We have accounts with several vendors that offer royal discounts. As they walked back through the corridor, Kate felt like she was living in some sort of alternate reality where water balloon fights had become matters of state policy. Did that really just happen? William asked, voicing what they were all thinking. I think, Harry said slowly, we've just been given royal permission to wage water warfare on palace grounds. More than permission, Kate corrected. We've been given a royal mandate. They paused outside the palace doors, looking out at the gardens where their afternoon battle was scheduled to take place. The sun was shining, the temperature was perfect, and somewhere in the oak trees, Harry's latest tactical innovations waited to be deployed. You know, William said thoughtfully, I think I'm beginning to understand why Father always said the Queen was the wisest person he'd ever known. Because she recognized the strategic value of water balloon combat? Harry asked. Because she understood that the most important royal duty is remembering how to be human. As they made their way toward the gardens for their officially sanctioned family warfare, Kate reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. What had started as Harry's simple idea to make William laugh had evolved into something much more significant. A reminder that even within the constraints of royal life, there was room for joy, spontaneity, and the simple pleasure of soaking your relatives with water balloons. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gardens as they took their positions for the siege of what Harry had dramatically dubbed Castle Gazebo. In a few hours, they would return to their formal duties, their public responsibilities, and their careful adherence to royal protocol. But for now, they were simply family, armed with water balloons and the blessing of the crown, ready to wage the most dignified, undignified battle in royal history. Kate hefted her super soaker and grinned at her husband, who was already plotting his defensive strategy behind the garden furniture. Sometimes, she thought, the most important victories were the ones that reminded you how good it felt to play. The siege of Castle Gazebo was about to begin, and for once in their carefully choreographed lives, none of them knew exactly how it would end. Which, Kate decided as she took aim at her unsuspecting target, was exactly as it should be.